All right, it's gonna be a weird one, but it'll be okay. So here is my little setup. So I've got my toolbox with my different various tools that we've collected. You guys do not have to purchase a whole lot of tools or really any tools for this project. You can really do this completely shaping by hand. Or using things that like you might already have at home, such as like a pizza cutter or maybe even like a fork or something like that. I've got my canvas mat. These are pre-cut. I have a class set of these, and so if you don't have something like this, you could always just use a t-shirt or something for that. I've got my clay, and then I have a spray bottle with water, and I have a plastic bag for my project. So we're going to kind of work through 3 different techniques. And then I will post some pictures of those techniques. So really what you want to be thinking about with the clay is, like I said, the dryness of it. So the clay that I have right now, this is actually really, really hard, really kind of dry. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to push this down a little bit and make some kind of indentions like that. And I'm going to spray that down with my water to get this a little bit more workable. You probably will not have to do this whenever you have clay straight out of the box, because it will still be good. This clay has been sitting in the box for a while, so it is a little bit harder to work with. So the 3 techniques that we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about slab building, coil building, and we're going to talk about pinch pots. Okay, so let me get this set up so that I can use both of my hands. Just a second. I told you this one was going to be weird. So we're going to do this. Oops, zoom out a little bit so you guys can see what I'm doing. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is coil building. So if you've ever used Play-Doh in your life, you have probably practiced coils and building coils. So basically all a coil is, so I'm going to take a small amount of clay into my hand, and I'm going to start by kind of just squeezing that out. And then we're going to do what every kid has ever done. We'll make a snake. Okay, so rolling a coil is just making a snake. Okay, so I'm going to I start with my fingers here in the middle. I use a pretty even pressure, and I'm going back and forth and moving my hands out as I build that coil. So depending on what it is that you're making for your project, this could be a good way to to build, right? And so I'm going to want to do this pretty even, keep it pretty even texture, and I can stretch this out as much as I want. I meant pressure, not texture. And I'm going to try and keep this nice and even, right? If I have an area of my coil, let's say that I left my hands too long here in this part, and I just kept rolling because I'm talking and I'm not paying much attention, right? See, now I have this like skinny part, and then I have a thicker part, and then it goes skinny again, and then it's thicker again at the end, right? So now my coil is not very even. That's not going to be great for building. So I would want to just kind of maybe break that part off, and then maybe work this middle section a little bit to even that out some more. So coils are really great if you want to build up a hollow shape, right? So let's say that I wanted to build up maybe a small glass or something. I could put my coils together like this, and then I can take my other coil and put it right there on top, and kind of just mush that together, right? So I'm going to attach those together. And then as I continue to build up, I can go out, right? If I put my coils further out, then I can create a different kind of form. If I put my coils farther in, then I could close off my form. However I want to do that. One thing that I will note though is I've not really smoothed this out yet, right? So I can pretty easily just take that off. So one thing that I can do, and that I would recommend you do as you are building, is to do something called score the objects that you're placing together. So if I'm going to score something, that just means I'm going to kind of scratch it up. So I'm using a little knife tool here, and I'm just kind of scratching that up a little bit. And then what I'm going to do, so I'm going to do both sides. I'm going to scratch this side up just a little bit. I'm just increasing the area that is going to come into contact, right? So I'm increasing that area. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my water bottle, and I'm just going to drip a little bit of water. I can actually just use my fingers. I'm going to do a little bit of water and kind of get that area of the clay a little bit softer. And then now, whenever I squish those together, you can kind of see the difference. As I push that down, those pieces of clay kind of merge together now into one. So then I could go in and use my finger and just really kind of smooth those out to create a single piece. Now, if this were all I was making, this little piece, there are easier ways to do that. But if I'm building something up and I want it to be nice and thin all the way up, let's say that I'm making like a bud vase, like a small flower vase or something like that, coil building would be the way to go, right? Because I would be able to really control that shape. If I wanted to have like a nice hourglass shape to it, or something like that, I could really control that. So I'm going to continue to kind of smooth this out all the way around. Nice, smooth texture on that outside. So that would be building with coils. And again, I could continue building, scoring, and adding a little bit of water as I continue up. Always remembering and thinking about the dryness of my clay. So if I make this little piece and I now need to roll some more coils, I would take this little piece that I'm building and I would put it into my plastic bag to wait while I roll the rest of my coils. And I would only roll a few coils at a time, as many as I can build with. You guys have to kind of time this a little bit, and thinking about how many coils you roll, keeping your coils wet, so that you are not having your clay get too dry before you're ready, right? So that is coil building. Again, just little snakes like you guys have always made since you were probably in kindergarten, okay? So the next thing that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about well, essentially just molding with our hands. So we're going to I'm going to make like a little pinch pot for us really quick. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take a nice little chunk of clay and I'm going to roll that up. I'm going to do that off camera because it's a little bit easier. All I'm doing is rolling that into a ball. We all know how to make a ball, right? Roll it into a ball, move it around, kind of cupping my hands around that so that I can make a nice little shape. Excuse me. So it's not perfect, but that's okay. We're not looking for perfection right now. So the next thing that I'm going to do making this is I'm going to just stick my thumb into it, make a little hole, right? And then I'm going to keep my thumb inside of that. I'm going to keep my other hand cupped, and I'm going to move around just like this, right? And as I squeeze around those edges, that is making that hole on the inside bigger. And I want to keep my all of the sides of my little pinch pot here, I want to keep them all about the same thickness so that they will dry. It'll dry about the same way, right? So you'll notice there's a lot of breakage happening. That's because this clay is a little bit older, right? And it's a little dry, so it's breaking up a little bit. So what I would want to do is I would want to kind of get that thickness, and I'm feeling that, right? With my thumb and my fingers, I can feel where it's a little bit thicker, where it's a little bit thinner, and I'm just really trying to work really hard to make that as even and uniform as possible so that my little pot here would dry at the correct at the same rate, right? I don't want to have one spot of my clay dry much faster because then it will separate out. So this spot right here is really thin. I'm going to kind of pull some clay over and patch that area just a little bit, okay? The next thing that I would want to do if I were doing this is I would want to kind of tap the bottom so that I have a little bit of a flat bottom there, right? So that I could sit. Now I can go in, now that I have the basic shape, I could go in and smooth out these cracks and work on, you know, patching any areas like this that I might need to patch, and just kind of work that outside a little bit. Now, this is another time where you're going to want to be paying attention to the dryness of your clay, right? So I want to make sure that my clay is not too dry, obviously, because I'm still working on it. But I also need to understand that if my clay is still wet, I'm not going to be able to fix a whole lot of texture, right? Because if I run my thumb over this, I'm going to pull off a lot of clay rather than just fixing that kind of texture. The other thing that I can do to smooth things out is I can use my water and just kind of smooth out that texture. You want to be really careful with this though, because you can kind of see that my finger is picking up a lot of the clay. So if that area is really thin, I could end up kind of going all the way through that. So that's another way that you can kind of smooth your textures, right, is by using that spray bottle and just kind of smoothing it all out nice and soft like that, right? So that is pinch pot or hand molding, and a little bit of smoothing. And so if I had this and I was like, man, I really love how this looks, but I want to get some nice textures in that, I could use my tools and start to kind of create some textures. Like maybe I want to have sort of like a checkered pattern, or you know, a little bit of like a plaid idea or something like that. I could go in and start to work with those textures a little bit where it is with it sort of wet, or I can let this sit out, let this dry a little bit, and then I can go in with some other tools and start carving or shaping or marking there. So that's our little pinch pot guy. And then the last technique that I want to talk about is going to be, it's called slab building. And so it's a little hard with the video the way that it is, but to get an idea of that, I'm going to take this piece that I have here, and I'm going to kind of just push it down. So a slab or slab building is basically just whenever you make a flat piece. And so the way that I would do that is kind of like this. So we kind of throw it. And what that does is it helps to really align all the particles, right? So all the little particles of clay, as I pick it up and slam it down, and then I'm going to pick up on the other side and kind of throw it down a little bit. And you can use a little bit more force than what I'm using right now because the camera is right here. I can't do a whole lot, but if you kind of really throw it down, it'll make a little slap. And I'm going to go back and forth. That's really going to help to line up those particles. It's going to strengthen my clay and to create a nice even slab the more that I do that, right? And so this is better than just pushing it down, because if I just push it down, all those particles just go smush and out, right? They don't line up and make a strong piece, right? If they, with slab building, because I'm compressing them down and then I'm compressing in the other direction, then they really start to line up and kind of stack on top of each other, which makes it a much stronger piece than if I just sat here and smushed it down. I might get a similar effect if I just sit here and smush it down. I could get a relatively flat piece to be maybe the lid to my pot, but I'm not really going to get a strong piece if I do that. So, excuse me, I'm going to continue to do my little slab buildings until I have it the right size. So this is a little small. I would want to continue to throw that until I get it to the right distance, and then I can use my little knife and trim to make my lid, right? And then if I am, so I'm kind of doubling up. So this is an Art 1 and Art 2, because Art 1 is going to be making these little pinch pots and lids and decorating them. So I'm kind of trimming around to make a nice little lid. The last thing that I would do for my lid is I would actually build a coil that's going to go on the inside right here, so that whenever I put my lid onto my little pinch pot, it's not fit super great, but you guys get the idea. Whenever I put my lid onto my little pinch pot, then it would not just kind of fall off, right? So it has like a little security there. So, and this is really thick. This is really, really thick. So I would not want to do that. I'm gonna move my camera just a minute so I can throw my slab. Just give me just a second. All right, and y'all can come back. Hello, hello. So now my slab, that is about the thickness that I would want my slab, right? That's much, much better. And then I can come around and I can see that that's actually going to, once I trim it, could actually fit my little pinch pot here. So Art 2, these are some techniques that you guys can use to build your objects, and think about attaching, think about your textures, think about, remember to think about the dryness of your clay. If you've got little pieces like this, you would want to keep them in the bag if you're going to use them. And then for Art 1, you guys will build your pinch pots, build your lids, and then you're going to think about how you're going to, what things you can add to your pinch pot and your lid, including some textures. And you're welcome to build something that goes on the top of your lid. You can make this into like a little cupcake with some icing. However you want to build your little jar and lid is up to you, but that's how you're going to build it. Okay, and I know this is a long video and I apologize, but sometimes you just got to have a long video. All right, now if I were going to work with this, if I were going to continue to work with this tomorrow, I would need to make sure that I spray this down with my water. I would just do a little spray, a little spray. I would probably spray both sides of my slab, and then I'm going to place this nicely into my plastic bag, and I would try and get all of that air out as much as possible, so that there's not any air in there that my objects can use to start drying up. So I would kind of push like that, close them up, so I have as little air as possible in there. If I wanted them to dry a little bit, let's say that I wanted them to get a little bit dry but not super dry, I still wanted to work with them a little, I might put them in there and just spray once into the bag, like not spray the objects, just spray a little bit into the bag, and then I would leave some air in there like that and then seal it up, which is going to let it kind of dry a little bit. If I want it to be a little bit more dry, right, the next level would be to leave my bag open, right? So I'm keeping a little bit of moisture, but then I'm leaving it open. If I'm 100% completely done with my objects, then I would not spray them with water. I would leave them out on top of the bag, right? And then place that somewhere where they can dry, where they would get some air. So those are the different levels of how you would want to take care of that, take care of your projects as you are continuing to build. All right, I'm sure there are things that I forgot, and I will make sure and put those into comments or announcements as needed. And you are always welcome, as usual, to contact me if you have any questions. All right, thanks guys.